never in California questioned whether or not we as taxpayers in the largest state in the union should support the people of Louisiana at a time of emergency and need. We never conditioned it. We never talked about putting the full faith and credit of the United States of America with the debt ceiling bill so we can get tax cuts for billionaires and corporations that don't need it, and then put at risk the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans that happen to live in California.
The phrase, every Republican accusation, is truly it. Admission about them has never been more true than right now, because we see Republicans, months after accusing President Biden and VP Harris of withholding aid, are not acting fast enough to respond to the natural disasters in North Carolina, Georgia, in my home state of Florida. We see Republicans doing just that, saying they're going to withhold aid from the state of California and doing everything they can to prevent action to support those in crisis right now in Los Angeles. And of course, Governor Gavin Newsom is responding to these ridiculous Republicans and calling out their BS. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way and really means the world to me. Now, like I said, Republicans have been talking now about conditioning aid to California, specifically Speaker Mike Johnson, who Gavin Newsom called out, and it led to an absolute MAGA meltdown. So before we get into what Mike Johnson said as he threw a tantrum at Gavin Newsom, let's check out Newsom's response to Republicans right here.
House Speaker Mike Johnson suggested additional aid might have to come from with certain conditions. Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso said he expects funding to have strings attached. Senator Tuberville even said California doesn't deserve anything, saying, quote, unless they show us they are going to make some changes. You have been here on the ground in communities for the last week. What is your reaction to the response from leaders in Washington?
Well, if that's leadership, I have a different definition. I imagine would be universally felt here. It's I'm not meeting Democrats, I'm not meeting Republicans, I'm not meeting Californians. I'm meeting American citizens desperate in need, and what they need is empathy, care, compassion, understanding. They need support, not rhetoric, not strings attached. I mean, I met families who lost not only their home, but their business and their church, their sense of self, place, community. They had a Zoom the other night, and everyone broke down crying because all they wanted to do was see the faces of one another. Mm-hmm. And yet that's the face of leadership in the state, the United States of America, conditioning aid to the American people in need, politicizing this tragic moment. So I'll spare any more commentary on it, except to say I would encourage these people. They're human beings, they're parents. I respect that. Come out here, visit with these folks. And let's have a conversation after that.
Now that really should have been the end of it. Gavin Newsom shouldn't have had to say anything else. These people are at the lowest points in their lives. California needs aid without strings attached. When have we ever attached any sort of conditions to responding to one of the worst natural disasters we have ever seen in this country in Los Angeles? It doesn't make any sense. But Republicans have continued to push this idea that they will be conditioning aid. And so Gavin Newsom once again had to call out their BS. And clearly it really upset MAGA this time, because we saw Speaker Mike Johnson melt down and throw a tantrum on social media as a response to this tweet post, Ed, by Gavin Newsom, with a video of his interview with our good friend Tyler-Cohen, calling out Republicans right here.
Never in California questioned whether or not we as taxpayers in the largest state in the union should support the people of Louisiana at a time of emergency and need. We never conditioned it. We never talked about putting the full faith and credit of the United States of America with the debt ceiling bill so we can get tax cuts for billionaires and corporations that don't need it, and then put at risk the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans that happen to live in California, a state with millions and millions of Trump supporters, Speaker Johnson and Mr. President-elect. Millions of your supporters are out here. They need your help, they need your empathy, they need your care, whatever compassion you can express, as opposed to condemnation and divisive language that has aided and embedded nothing except mis and disinformation that's flamed fear and flamed a lot of anxiety for folks that are simply trying to recover and at the same time our first responders trying to address the emergency at hand, which still hasn't been fully buttoned up.
So once again, this shouldn't even be a discussion. Gavin Nome should be spending his time devoting his energy in talking about the ways that we can support people in California, instead of having to convince Republicans that they shouldn't have conditions attached to that support, to that disaster relief. And it's ridiculous to even have to do this for Gavin Newsom, but he does have to do this because if Republicans aren't held accountable, they'll do whatever they want. But clearly, being called out for this ridiculous behavior has triggered Speaker Mike Johnson. And so he posted this tweet on social media. Mike Johnson wrote, "Instead of making highly produced clapback videos with social media influencers, you should get to work helping Californians. You're the leader of a state in crisis, and you should finally start acting like it." Gavin Nome then responded to Mike Johnson writing, "Mr. Speaker, when Louisianans needed help after hurricanes, it's Californians, many of whom have been impacted by these fires, who foot the bill to help your constituents, and they did it without playing partisan games. Millions of your supporters are out here, and they need your help, empathy, and care, and whatever compassion you are willing to express, do the right thing." California pays more in federal taxes than any other state, and we see red states all across the country who constantly need federal assistance, not in cases of disaster relief. No, just day-to-day support from the federal government to keep them running. I don't know where this idea that it's California that's mooching off of the rest of the country came from, but clearly Mike Johnson doesn't know what he's talking about and needed to be educated by Gavin Newsom. And it wasn't making a highly produced social media influencer video. He was talking with Tyler-Cohen, one of the best journalists out there, of course, about the need to respond to these crises, the need to stop playing partisan games. This isn't social media influencing. This is life or death. Tyler-Cohen lives in Los Angeles. He's talking about his community just utter nonsense from Mike Johnson. And of course, he's not the only Republican doing this. We've also seen it from Donald Trump and Elon Musk, who Gavin Nome called out right here.
I'm more interested from you in how damaging it is when you have somebody with that type of a platform who is next week going to be the president of the United States is injecting inaccurate information about the worst wildfires in American history.
Let me answer that by thanking President of the United States, Joe Biden, who within 36 hours supported a major disaster declaration by text. Within a few minutes later, committed 100. He could have just committed 75%, 90. He said 100% of all the costs for disaster recovery. That took the time to meet with first responders, was here on the ground. I want to thank President Joe Biden. And then I want to offer that as an example to the incoming president of presidential leadership, a president of the United States of America, being here for the American citizen. He didn't ask me, is this a conservative part of California, Altadena? Did they vote for me? What? He didn't ask for his staff to look at the last election and see how many were for Kamala or how many were for Donald Trump. He said, "Pal, you got it. We have their backs." Express empathy. I have firefighters that went up to him and they had tears in his eyes after meeting Joe Biden, who was consoling them. I think that's an example for the incoming president. What's not, I think, helpful or beneficial is the string of consciousness, these wild-eyed fantasies that somehow the state water project, we have reservoirs that are at or near historic highs, full, completely full, that somehow there's a magical spigot in California, in Northern California, that just can be turned on and all of a sudden there'll be rain or water flowing everywhere. It's not helpful.
We know why Trump and Elon are acting the way they are. It's because they benefit from the chaos, from the crisis. They benefit from the misinformation being pushed about California, saying that this is a fire because of DE, whatever that means, pushing these lies so that they can find a distraction from their own incompetency in government and say that California is the real problem, that DAE is why Donald Trump won't be able to lower the cost of eggs or housing or gas or energy. At large, they always need a scapegoat because they're a party of obstruction, not a party of action. And so now that they're in charge, they're looking around for something to complain about, to try to take your attention away from their own failures. And speaking of taking your attention, Donald Trump certainly doesn't want you to be paying attention to his nominee for the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bassent, because he's making it clear who Donald Trump serves in this clip right here.
I think we need to be fiscally responsible. We need to work to close the deficit and bring the national debt under control. In 2013, Congress extended the Bush tax cuts for everyone except those making more than $400,000 a year. This bipartisan decision saved the Treasury $600 billion, helping to narrow the deficit. Do you agree that ending the tax cuts for those making more than $400,000 would help close the deficit and reduce our national debt?
Senator Warnock, I do not. I believe that you would capture an inordinate amount of small business people who largely are in that cohort of 400,000 to a million.
So you wouldn't cut it off at 400,000. What about $1 million?
That again, I believe these are small business pass-through owners, and I believe that we, as I said before, Wall Street's done great. It is time for Main Street to do well, and small businesses need to drive what I call the reprivatization here away from this government spending.
I agree that it's Main Street's time. I'm from Atlanta, so I'll say Peachtree and some other locations in my state. What about those making more than 10 million? Would we reduce the deficit by extending those tax cuts for folks making about $10 million?
So again, I think it's important that we put in incentives for them to invest. So going back to the 100% depreciation for equipment, that I think that.
And I don't mean to keep interrupting, but I'm the pastor, and we're known to be loquacious of speech, but I'm running out of time here. What about $1 billion?
So again, that I think that these are the job creators.
So there's no income level for which you would support raising taxes. Is that fair?
There is no income level that I don't think we should continue the TCJA as it was.
We need to really look at the money that we're sending to California by billionaires. No. Let's make sure they have more cash. Let's let it flow for billionaires. No. Taxes needed from them. They don't need to pay their fair share. Not at all. That is Donald Trump's agenda that is going to be the Donald Trump presidency, and we need to call it out. And we're going on the show every single day. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.